Good afternoon, students, staff, and community of Beloit College, and welcome to the 2020 MLK Junior Convocation. Education must enable one to sift and weigh evidence to discern the truth from the false, the real from the unreal, and the facts from the fiction. Martin Luther King Jr. The quote from Martin Luther King Jr. states that education should be able to enable the support to understand what is fake and what is real. The education you are provided should prove that you can not only simply fight what is not true, but understand and expel what is truly a lie. The entire idea of liberal arts schools was founded on the idea of challenging you to consider not only to solve problems, but also trains you to ask what problems to solve and why. Martin Luther King Jr. believed this, that freedom of the mind is what allows us to truly be free, and that our strength is our ability to think beyond what is presented at face value. Being able to comprehend and understand a situation is the result of success as a student, and it's those that we are ready to handle whatever is presented as. What we do at SCC and on this campus is to continue that idea. The McNair Scholars Program provided at the SSECE is there to support minority groups on this campus and give us a chance to progress our education farther from a simple bachelor's degree. What we are tasked with is to utilize these tools to succeed on the forefront of the global fight. The problem that we are currently facing worldwide is the damage to the earth. From the degradation to the atmosphere to the continued melting of the old ice layers, we are being tasked with one of the most serious situations at hand. Dr. Ken Cadler, an atmospheric scientist at the Carnegie Institution for Science, states that there's a 93% chance that the global warming would increase by 4 degrees Celsius or 39.2 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of this century. That much damage to the earth is destructive, but we can already see the results of the current global warming effect that it's having on Australia. The world is beginning to struggle, and it needs people who know what's right and what's wrong. And these people are here. It needs students who are taught that success is to go beyond the call. The words stated by Martin Luther King Jr. states, "We are prone to judge success by the index of our salaries or the size of our multiple bills, rather than the quality of our service. We are here to put in work to not only survive, but to support our fellow man in the world we live on. What we do on this campus is help these kind of traits to blossom." Now, I would like to present Regina D. Hendrix of Beloit with Lift Every Voice and Sing.
True to our God and true to our native land. The victory is mine. It is mine. Lift every voice and sing. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would now like to introduce someone that students refer to as Scotty B, but for formality's sake, we have President Scott Bierman, who will be giving the opening remarks.
Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. This morning, I had the opportunity to go to the city hosts a Martin Luther King commemorative breakfast, and it was at Beloit Memorial High School, just across the river. And it was unbelievably gloriously hosted by Regina Hendrix, who you just heard sing so beautifully. It's been a long day for Regina, but Regina, thank you so much for both the song and your hosting. It was really good this morning. So welcome. It's good to be with you here today. Thanks for coming to this beautiful chapel and for this Dr. Martin Luther King Day Junior Convocation at Beloit College. I look out at this room with all of you. I'm reminded how amazingly fortunate I am to be here with you at this college in this community. This community and this college proudly share both a name and a history. It's a history that is intertwined, complicated, fraught, exemplary, and rich. It is one for which, as president of Beloit College, I am exceedingly proud, really proud, and I talk about this all the time. One of the best aspects of the college's long tradition of hosting our Martin Luther King Day Convocation is that the community and the college physically come together unlike any other day of the year. That's a big deal. It's a great thing. We do not do it often enough, but we're doing it now, and it is terrific. Thank you for being here. As you know, like all great ministers, Dr. King was an educator at heart. Of course, his well-honed skills as a communicator in speech and in writing remain nearly unparalleled. But so are his abilities to collaborate with people from vastly different backgrounds and to orchestrate complicated harmonies across their multiple strengths. These were talents that were earth-shatteringly effective. His clear-headed understanding of how to call out precisely those things most foundationally in need of being questioned and changed within the cacophony of a world where the most important concerns can be muffled, allowed him to be heard above so many others. And his ability to both stay focused on the moment while staying firmly grounded to the largest and boldest of core principles and longer-term objectives paved the way for small successes to lead to much larger successes. These are all capacities educators of merit and substance try to develop in their students. It is the lifeblood of a transformative and consequential education. The disciplinary content contained in courses and journals and essays are stillborn without these capacities. To Dr. King, a purposeful education was one that put people to work, to action, to effect. He spent great energy honing his own skills in these viscerally impactful areas. No wonder among the proudest days at Beloit College is the chance to devote this time together to celebrating one of this nation's greatest educators. But we come together not just to celebrate the man, Dr. Martin Luther King, but also the cause he spent his life working to achieve, fundamental human rights and human liberties. 400 years ago, in 1619, the course of American history was forever blighted. It was 400 years ago that the first slave ship landed on the shores of Virginia. The history of this country became, at that time, for certain, a history that would be foundationally racialized. Nicole Hannah-Jones, in her essay titled "The Idea of America," asks us to consider how the construction of American history would be different, more productively insightful, and closer to truth, were we to take the origins of the country to start in 1619. This is far more than a pedantic exercise. She is asking, how would America be different if its history were taught with 1619 as the grounding moment? Mary Elliott and Jasmine Hughes offer a vivid lesson in what this type of reframing might mean for how students come to understand the evolution of this country in their essay, A Brief History of Slavery. And Nikita Hughes provokes some tough questions about the role that all too complicit educational institutions play in sustaining institutional racism in her essay, Why Can't We Teach This? I mention these three essays because they are all part of the New York Times 1619 project. Now, turns out that communication on this campus is a challenge in a variety of ways. So as I was writing these comments last night, I had no idea that Kayla Hataway would be giving a talk on precisely the same topic in just a few minutes. So I'll try hard, Kayla, not to step all over your comments. So I mentioned these essays because they come from the New York Times 1619 project. And to quote from the Times, in August of 1619, a ship appeared on the horizon near Point Comfort, a coastal port in the English colony of Virginia. It carried more than 20 enslaved Africans who were sold to the colonists. No aspect of the country that would be formed here has been untouched by the years of slavery that followed. In the 400th anniversary of this fateful moment, it is finally time to tell our story truthfully. The 1619 Project is an ongoing initiative from the New York Times Magazine that began in August of 2019, the 400th anniversary of the beginning of American slavery. It aims to reframe the country's history by placing the consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans at the very center of our national narrative. In previous years, I've used my introductory remarks to this convocation to offer a short reading list, and I do so today as well. All you need do is to type 1619 Project into whatever internet browser, on whatever device you have, and up will pop a link to the New York Times Project. And you will quickly land on a very manageable reading list that includes these essays and a few more. It also includes some multimedia and interactive opportunities. I urge you to participate in the 1619 Project, at least at this level, and maybe to be brave enough to wade into these waters even more deeply. Among the many memorable things that were penned by Dr. Martin Luther King was a sentence that was delivered in a lecture from November of 1967. He said, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Of course, a pathway out of silence is a more complete and accurate understanding of our shared history. Being together today is part of what it means to shed that silence, but it's only a part. Today, in particular, is a reminder there is much more that we can do, that is not only possible, but an obligation we have as citizens and as human beings. This is the enduring lesson from Dr. King. Being reminded of this is among the great benefits of this convocation. If you take me up on my recommendation to explore the 1619 project, I look forward to hearing from you about what lessons we can take that are actionable from both a community and a college perspective, all in the service of human rights and human liberties. That, I think, would bring a smile to Dr. Martin Luther King's face. Welcome, everybody. I give you back over to Ava, who is next on the agenda.
I already said good afternoon, but I'll say it again. Good afternoon, Beloit. My name's Ava, as Scott Bierman said. I've been tasked today with speaking on one of our themes, equity. However, in order to understand equity, we must first understand what equality is and the differences between equity and equality. Equality is described as a state of being equal, whereas equity is described as being just and fair inclusion. Equality and equity differ in that equality assumes that everybody is operating within the same playing field, whereas equity operates within the framework that there are separate playing fields that must be put into consideration in order for everyone to be able to reach their full potential in society. When thinking of equity in the U.S., dehumanizing acts like slavery must be recognized as key factors in the creation of systems and institutions that we currently operate within, institutions that include colleges. Beloit College's mission statement has nothing related to equity in it. However, the Office of Success, Equity, and Community describe their mission as creating opportunities and pathways for students of different backgrounds and demographics. This statement reveals the intentions of the college to create a space for marginalized students in an environment that is not necessarily created for them or us. As an institution, Beloit College must actively work to dismantle structures that are historically exclusionary in the institution in order to create an equitable learning environment and space for Black and brown students, or else equity cannot actually be achieved. Historically, Beloit College has allowed Black students to enroll at the institution, one of the first Black female students being Grace Owsley, who graduated around 1904. However, numbers have always remained low for Black students on campus, as well as other marginalized groups. Despite the college's acceptance of Black and brown students on campus, Black students specifically still had various issues with the institution, and justifiably so. In 1969, Black students made a list of 12 demands called the Black Demands that forced the institution to critically evaluate how they were operating. Some of the demands included the hiring of Black faculty, recruitment aimed at Black students, scholarships for Black students, and diverse curriculum to be used in classes, and mandatory professional development on race for all faculty and students. Although the demands were allegedly won, Beloit College didn't hire their first Black female professor until around 1998, Professor Majid, and the number of Black students remain at less than 10% currently of the student body. As MLK said, freedom is never given by the oppressor, it must be demanded. And Beloit College students have consistently voiced and made their demands apparent. Every hate act that occurs on campus is met with protests and demands for changes within the institution in order to make it a more equitable space for students on campus. Without protests from students, the changes we see today in the institution may not have occurred until much later, or not at all, even though half of the Black demands have still not yet been met by the college. When I was tasked with thinking of equity for this convocation, it was really hard for me to think about how exactly this institution is equitable. The first thing that came to my mind were organizations like Students for an Inclusive Campus, Black Students United, Beloit Cross Disability Coalition, and other groups that were formed by students on campus to address concerns they had that were making their learning space inequitable. Students organize and create spaces constantly on campus in order to advocate for issues and bring change to the institution. And the institution, in turn, allows these groups to organize, and they take demands and concerns of students into consideration when creating on-campus resources like the Office of Student Success, Equity, and Community. Faculty also play a large role in equity on campus, and in my department, the history department, professors are constantly adding Black scholars to their coursework and advocate for their Black and brown students. I have found some of the most amazing professors and faculty at this campus that consistently promote an equitable classroom environment. In this sense, I think that many professors on campus fit the MLK quote that reads, "An individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity." I've seen on this campus that faculty and staff do not just think about themselves, but rather look at their students and the needs that they need to meet in their classrooms in order to work with the various identities in their spaces. Community is key in creating equitable spaces because communities are how change is made, and through continuing to fight and petition for our own justice within an oppressive system, because as MLK said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Thank you. And hold on, I would now like to re-invite Regina Hendrix, who will be introducing the next speaker.
Thank you, Ava. If you don't know, now that I'm not singing, I am Regina Hendrix, the director of the Beloit College Help Yourself pre-college programs. And if you know me, if anyone knows me, you know that one of my passions is dealing with and helping and empowering young people. So when Daksha asked for me to suggest someone to speak today, I could choose from a plethora. I know many, but one person came to mind, and that was Dashawn Isabell. He's a senior at Beloit Memorial High School and a participant in our Beloit College Help Yourself pre-college programs. I love Dashawn. And you'll see he's very charismatic, just confident, someone who I knew wouldn't be afraid to come and speak in front of a group of people, but he graciously accepted. And so I present to you Dashawn Isabell.
Hello, everybody. How are you guys? Feedback, how are you guys? Okay, thank you. That makes me a little less nervous. Can I adjust this? Just a little bit? Okay, sorry. I am here to talk about the impact of the community. And one of the things Dr. King said is people fail to get along because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they have not communicated with each other. I believe that communication is very vital and necessary to any community. I believe that in our community and in communities nationwide, what happens is we let social stereotypes dictate who we communicate with. I'm not saying this to put Beloit's community or any community down. I'm saying this because when we make what we hear our beliefs, it opens up a door for unnecessary and unfair thoughts towards people we don't know. How can our world get better when we do this? It's time that we stop judging because of color, but by character, which Dr. Martin Luther King spoke on that as well. Just because I don't look like you doesn't mean that I'm qualified. I love Beloit and I love this world, but we have work to do. We must realize that you can be capable and colored. You can be capable and not look like me. So I challenge you, if you haven't already, treat one another as human beings, not as a stereotype. Thank you for this opportunity, and I pray that Beloit will continue to grow, not only as a city, but as a community. And who is that community? The community is you. Thank you.
I would like to bring Emma Hadaway to the stage on Spoken Word 1619.
everybody. My name is Kayla Hataway, and I am a senior here at Beloit College. I am majoring in sociology with a minor in critical identity studies, and I am only here to speak briefly about the 1619 project, so it is okay. I'm so glad that Scott was able to give you guys a rundown because I'm not gonna go so in depth. The 1619 Project was created by the New York Times, and its name commemorates the year that the first group of West African slaves were brought to the United States. The creators of the project aim to educate people about the impact slavery has had on the U.S. today, and also want to acknowledge 1619 as our founding rather than 1776. Of course, there is no denying that slavery has impacted or has affected our lives through things like racism, injustices, inequities, etc., but the 1619 Project takes it a step further. They argue that things like the economy, healthcare, criminal justice, music and entertainment, and so on were all heavily impacted by slavery and are actually rooted in slavery. With all this being said, this may make you uncomfortable, this may be something new to you, but no matter what, it's good to know the country's history. And it's important for this conversation to be had at Beloit because at the end of the day, no matter how you look at it, slavery has influenced our lives. In honor of the project, I'll be doing an altered version of the opening scene from the play The Colored Museum. Afterwards, we will hear from Mez, a first year that I've had the pleasure of working with. Within her first couple of months here, she's already making her mark and continues to involve herself in activities, programs, and organizations that help to make Beloit a community. With that being said, please make sure to give her a warm welcome when she comes. Welcome aboard Celebrity Slave Ship, departing the Gold Coast and making short stops at Rio de Janeiro, Kingston, and Havana before a final destination of Savannah. Hi, I'm Miss Pat, and I'll be serving you here in Cabin A. We will be crossing the Atlantic at an altitude that's pretty high, so you must wear your shackles at all times. If you have any trouble bonding yourself, I'd be more than glad to assist. Once we reach the desired altitude, the captain will turn off the fasten your shackles sign located on each side of the aircraft, allowing you a chance to stretch and dance in the aisles a bit, but otherwise, shackles must be worn at all times. Also, we ask that you please refrain from call and response singing between cabins, as that sort of thing can lead to rebellion. And of course, no drums are allowed on board. Can you repeat after me? No drums. No drums. With a little more enthusiasm, please. No drums. No drums. That was great. Once we're airborne, I'll be by with magazines, and earphones can be purchased for the price of your firstborn male. If there's anything I can do to make this middle passage more pleasant, press the little button overhead, and I'll be with you faster than you can say, "Go down, Moses." Thanks for flying, Celebrity, and here's to hoping you have a pleasant takeoff. Hi. Miss Pat again, I'm sorry to disturb you, but someone is playing drums. And what did we just say? No drums. It must be someone in coach, but we here in Cabin A are not going to respond to those drums. As a matter of fact, we don't even hear them. Repeat after me. I don't hear any drums. And I will not rebel. Okay, now I realize some of us are a bit edgy after hearing about the tragedy on board the Laughing Mary, but let me assure you, Celebrity has no intention of throwing you overboard and collecting the insurance. We value you. The songs you are going to sing in the cotton fields under the burning heat and stinging lash will metamorphose and give birth to the likes of James Brown and the Jackson 5. And you, yes you, are going to come up with some of the best dances. The best dances. The funky chicken, the Tootsie Roll, the Soulja Boy, the Whoa, and even twerking. And just think of what you are going to mean to William Faulkner. All right. So you're gonna have to suffer for a few hundred years, but from your pain will come a culture so complex that everyone will want to appreciate it. And with these little items here, you'll become millionaires. Yes, millionaires. But remember, don't rebel. Don't bend a knee. Don't panic. We're just caught in a little thunderstorm. Now, the only way you're going to make it through is if you abandon your God and worship a new one. The captain has assured me that everything is fine. We're just caught in a little time warp. So let's look out our window, shall we? On your right, you will see the American Revolution, which will give the US of A exclusive rights to your life. And on your left, you will see the Civil War, which means you will vote Republican until FDR comes along. And now we're passing over the Great Depression, which means everyone gets to live the way you've been living. That was World War I, which is not to be confused with World War II or the Korean War or the Vietnam War, all of which you will play a major role in. Oh, look. Now we're passing over the 2000s. Colin Powell, Barack and Michelle, the natural hair movement, there's Beyonce. Jordan Peele is making realistic scary movies where black people don't die first. And the oh wait, they're not black. Look, Moonlight has just beat La La Land for Best Picture. Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Laquan McDonald, Tamir Rice, Ayanna Jones, Rakia Boyd, the Charleston Nine. Stop playing those drums. Those drums will be confiscated once we reach Savannah. You can't change history. You can't turn back the clock. Repeat after me. I don't hear any drums. I will not rebel. I will not rebel. I will not. Hi. Miss Pat here. Things got a bit jumpy back there, but the captain has just informed me we have safely landed in Savannah. Please check the overhead before exiting, as any baggage you don't claim, we trash. It's been fun, and we hope the next time you consider travel, it's with celebrity. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Button your coat, it's a little chilly out there, okay? Bye-bye. Have a nice day. Oh, that crown you're wearing, you won't need it where you're going. You can hand it here. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a nice day. Have a nice day. Have a nice day.
Can you guys hear me? Yes, okay. Thank you, Kayla, that was awesome. I'm gonna call my speech Dashawn's Message Part 2 because I use the same exact quote and I'm gonna say the same exact thing, so thank you. I am convinced that men hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't communicate with each other, because they are separated from one another. The message of this sentence, spoken by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., still rings true today. Because while the racial tensions in our nation have cleared up enough to allow for the integration of diverse thoughts, people, and ideas, they have also revealed deep and painful truths about the lasting impact of racism and discrimination in general, many of which the general public would like to ignore in the name of MLK, claiming that discrimination ended with the civil rights movement and that MLK's work has been done. But this is most certainly not the case. Discrimination is very much alive today and evolving to become more camouflaged. Communities are suffering because of this. The demographics of colleges and university staff often fail to wholly represent the diversity of our nation, meaning they lack a certain cultural diversity and knowledge. The solution to this is providing funding for others to do the work that they cannot. Schools across America have clubs like Students for an Inclusive Campus, safe spaces like Black Students United, and offices like Students for Success, Equity, and Community. These are groups created by minorities, for minorities, and funded by the majority. They are groups that have broken off from the majority because the majority fails to provide them with what they need. And while they heal, they are tasked with reminding the majority that they exist every so often by, for example, putting on events that celebrate their lesser-known holidays or holding open discussions about hate crimes that happened against them. These spaces, while honorable, are just another form of separation. We have groups like Students for an Inclusive Campus because campuses fail to be inclusive enough. We have safe spaces like Black Student United because people of color still feel unsafe sharing certain parts of their life with the rest of their peers. And we have offices like SSEC because administrations lack the ability to recognize holidays and important events that minorities enjoy in the same way that they can for the majority. These groups' goals are to make our campus and community more inclusive, and while they do, they also put more pressure on minorities to continue to provide and advocate for themselves, which is exhausting and emotionally debilitating at times. These groups often find that those in attendance of their events and meetings are other minorities or people already aware of their struggle, furthering a separation from the majority and a disjoint in our community. As a member of the Beloit College community, it is not my intent to critique our efforts, only our purpose. If we are committed to being successful, inclusive, and equitable, we must make sure that these groups do not only function for minorities by minorities, but for minorities by everyone. I challenge every able and willing person in this room, including myself, to 1, recognize where you fall into a majority, 2, look up the list and clubs of organizations at Beloit College and the surrounding community and find a group where you become a minority, and 3, go to a meeting or an event that they are hosting just to see how it feels and what you can learn. MLK said, "We must learn to live together as brothers or we will perish as fools." It is not the responsibility and job of minorities alone to support their communities and uplift themselves. It is everyone's responsibility. And when we fully realize this and practice it, I believe that we will have a community that does not need separate, smaller communities within it, but one that can move together, a community that MLK would have been proud of. I'm now going to introduce our keynote speaker. Dr. Kesho Scott is an associate professor at Grinnell College. She has a BA in sociology from Wayne State University and an MA in political sociology, as well as a PhD in American studies. She is internationally renowned diversity trainer and consultant and an associate professor of American studies and sociology. She's an award-winning writer, and in over 2 decades of developing unlearning racism work, Dr. Scott has led hundreds of professional and community-based workshops. She's been the keynote speaker for national conferences, as well as a participant on several dozen national and local radio debates, discussions, and public service announcements, as well as on Oprah. She's also my mom, who happened to teach me a lot, so it's my pleasure to invite her to the stage.
So I hope you're ready to rock and roll, because I don't do things the normal way in the sense that I'm going to talk at you. So be ready to do some work, all right? I'm going to speak fast sometimes. I'm going to speak slow sometimes. I'm going to be poetic sometimes. But I would be amiss if I didn't start out by saying thank everyone who was involved in making it possible for me to be here today. So let's give them an applause. There are so many people. Another thing I want to say is that to get the endorsement of your daughter to be here and to be introduced by her is a coup d'etat in the mother-daughter relationship. You know what that means? I think you do. It's quite an honor. So Mezekerta Tesfay, Mommy loves you. I love you. Where are you at? Where did you go? Okay, well, I was looking for you here. I also want to say that I'd like to evoke 2 of my speaker privileges. First, to ask for your participation by following my requests throughout this talk. Would that be okay? Would you be ready for that? Let me just try and see. Everybody raise your hand, cross your hand, stomp, hands down. Oh my God, you're ready. Okay. All right. So you're willing to do that. Thank you, because that's going to make more enriching the remarks I'm going to make. And second, I'd also like to thank Dr. Daksha Howard. Please stand up for a moment. Absolutely. Everybody applaud this person. Please. Now you have to imagine this scenario. I get this phone call, these warm words. I'm not sure that I want to come, followed by all her efficient emails. Then return phone calls of all my questions about what I can expect, and guess what? I'm persuaded to be here. So I want to personally thank you, because the work you do got me here. Thank you very much. Thank you. My remarks will be called Truth Forever on the Scaffold, and it is part of a larger quote that I want you to say as I say it with you. Will you do it in parts? Are you ready? I didn't hear you. Yes. Oh my goodness, you'd be great students. Truth forever on the scaffold. Wrong forever on the throne. Yet that scaffold sways the future. Hands up, sway it. That's it. All right. And behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own. Truth forever on the scaffold is a line from a poem written in 1845 by James Russell Lowell called The Present Crisis. It was about abolition of slavery, which many of you have made reference to, and your work was profound. Thank you. You set it up well for me. He talked about the abolition of slavery. The original context of that poem, as I said, was about the abolition of slavery, and addressed the question of whether a person then, repeat after me, should take a stand to resist the institution of slavery or not. For Lowell, the truth on the scaffold was about abolishing slavery. The wrong on the throne was then, and again now, slavery, recognizing that slavery was maintained legally. But I have a question for you. How many of you know of many situations and laws today that are legal? They are wrong, but still wrong in your opinion. Raise your hand. How many people know that? How many people could probably cite that? I'm not giving you a homework assignment. I just want you to recognize that. So what he experienced, you already also know, right? That there are many things that are legal and wrong that are still out there. So like Lowell, Dr. King saw the wrong on the throne that permitted racial segregation, economic inequalities, structural and cultural racism, and the interference in other countries' business through militarism and war. Lowell, although an abolitionist, a social justice worker of his day, used the pen to imply his power. But he was not an activist. He was not a leader of any movement. He simply appealed to the consciousness of the individual to support truth or not. On the other hand, Dr. King became a social justice warrior of his day by using the power of activism and persuasion. As already mentioned by your president, his oratory skills moved hearts and minds. Hands up, swaying the scaffold toward the future. Where the hell is your future? Get it out here. There you go. Thank you. He swayed the scaffold for the future. And that future, his dream, was about justice, inclusion, and equality for all. Now, let me be clear. Dr. King modeled through the throne that the throne could be rocked, hands out, that you could rock the throne, even when it appears to be solid, even when it appears to be impenetrable. Thrones can be corrected. You got that? All right. Dr. King modeled that those on the throne, come on, hands up. Some people get to be on those thrones, are people who could also be changed by truth. So it is no surprise that many people who may have been in resistance to slavery and other kinds of wrongs eventually joined those people who wanted to change these problems, hands down. And Dr. King modeled for those governed by the throne that even as they stand in the dim unknown, let's say that, stand in the dim unknown. Big challenge here, stand up. Everybody stand up. Hands up. That's the dim unknown, right? Stay there. Because sometimes when you're involved in the work of changing society, you are in the dim unknown. You're not going to know what the impact of your change is going to be. Not knowing what's going to happen next when the change. Dr. King said, the truth will set us free. Have a seat. Now I want to invite you to the next line of the poem. Standeth God in the shadow keeping watch. Folks, is straight out instructions. That's all it is. It's just an instruction. What is an instruction? I looked it up in the dictionary. It's a direction or an order with detailed information on how something should be done. That's what an instruction is. And generally, it comes from some practice. Are you following me? That somebody has experienced something and they're put it in a formula so that we know what in fact to do. The instructions of Dr. King are for us as we recognize the truth. It requires that we remain awoke through a great revolution. You know that word was coined by Dr. King. How many people have ever heard that? Raise your hand. A few of you, good. The rest of you, homework. In coining that phrase in his famous speech, he talked about doing something about the social and economic issues of your time, whatever time that is. Because no one in this life will not be affected by the issues that affect us all. Reach over and hold someone's hand, please. Right? Every single one of us will be affected. Let something happen, hands up. Keep on, we'll be affected. Let something else happen, we will be affected. Let something else happen, we'll be affected. This is nicey stuff. Imagine if it wasn't so nice. No one will escape the impact, right? And that is the challenge of the moment that we live in, hands down. You're doing great, by the way. Dr. King warned us, injustice anywhere, say that. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Now, I want you to know that it's now time for the whats. Now, I want you to say what with an attitude. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. What? No, that's not good enough. Attitude. 1, 2, 3. What? I heard a little tweak. One more time. Some of you people of color, whack it out a little bit here. 1, 2, 3, go. What? That's it. Kind of like, what? Right? It's kind of like that. Because I'm here to tell you that he warned us. And there are the whats. It's a list I'm going to read to you about the things that are in your lifetime that you can't sleep through the revolution because we are all connected. One by one, climate change. Oh, no, that wasn't good. We're going to start again. We're going to get ready, and we're going to get fast. You got that? All right. But don't let me divide you up, and then we start a little competition here, all right? Because I'll do it. Climate change. Rights for all genders. No, you're supposed to say what? All right, let's try that again. Get on the wagon. Climate change. What? Rights for all genders. What? Global and economic justice. What? Now the rise of all the issues. Global anti-black racism. What? Anti-Semitism. What? Homophobia. What? Violence and harassment against women. Good, you're ready. I see you're ready. Xenophobia, mass incarceration, white supremacy. There you go. We're keeping on. The list is longer, and there's more. Displacement of workers' rights, the absence of a humane health care system, racial injustice, immigration policies that are racist and exclusionary, the subjugation of indigenous people, abusing policing responsibilities, school to prison pipeline, Mass shootings. Gun rights. College debt. Polluting the ocean. And so many more. What do you say? That's right. I heard it from in here. These are the issues of your time. Your time. Your moment. Guess what? We are all going to have to be social justice activists of our day. Whether in a family, on a college campus, in a community, in a nation, or in a person's heart. Not just because we're targeted, because of our skin, our class, our gender performance, our nationality, our religion, our language, because all the intersections of our identity are going to make you have to move. You understand? They're going to make you have to move. As we practice truth forever on the scaffold, we'll have to follow more of Dr. King's instructions, because Dr. King warned us again that the time is always right to do what is right. The challenge for all of us, hands up, come on, psh, let's do it, psh, is to have an imagination in making that change. Activism requires, come on, psh, imagination. And it is in my mind that each of us have to have, come on, you don't even know what this is yet, you're so cute, right? You have to pick up that grain of salt. Pick it up. Sand. I'm going to call it sand. You have to pick up that grain of sand, because I am saying that each of you will have a grain of sand of your own form of activism. It doesn't have to be like anybody else. Get your hand back up. Every single one of you will have to have a grain of sand, right? To participate in this movement that I think is important. And this sand, keep your hands up, this grain of sand is unique to each and one of you. Hands over here. One is not better than the other, because people do that in that Cartesian thinking, right? All of it is right, and all of it is needed, and all of it requires a call to act. Thank you. So I want to tell you two stories. Are you ready to hear them? Because it says when you make a proper speech, you're supposed to tell a story. So I'm following that structure, all right? I want to tell you two stories. But first, I want to preface one of those stories by, have you ever had, or do you have, a roommate? Raise your hand. Oh my goodness, that means we have had a common experience. You either have, get your hand back up, or have had a roommate. Look around the room, okay? Okay, good, hands down. So let me quickly tell you the story. When I was growing up, my grandfather, Leroy Newman, who went to college in the South in the late 1940s after World War II, would tell me Marty stories of the boy he went to college with. He did not say very favorable things about him. He said he was short and chubby. He said he was four-eyed and wore big glasses. He was not popular with the ladies, and he spent most of his time in the library reading. He was quiet, studied of all things philosophy. He sucked up to the administration. He went on to graduate school in the East Coast, which Southerners found strange. He graduated and took over his father's business. He married his local sweetheart. He began a family until, say that word, until his life was interrupted by injustice. Now, by contrast, my grandpa was tall, handsome, a veteran of the war. He played sports. He gave lip service to very unorthodox ideas at that time, things like being an atheist and socialism. He read books too, went to graduate school, married late in his life, and he worked until he retired from the Michigan Internal Revenue Service. His life was interrupted by the work of that boy who fought against injustice. My grandfather's roommate was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This is where you're supposed to say, wow. Or what? Let's do that one. What? But Martys are not born Dr. Martin Luther Kings. They become that way. And if they're lucky, hands up, if they take that grain of sand, right, they can inspire other people to pick theirs up too. That's what they do. My grandfather followed Marty the rest of Dr. King's life. He was there at the protests and the rallies, at the church bake sales, raising money to get him out of jail. I think my grandfather reported 10 times out of the 29 times that Dr. King went to jail. He helped his family and helped the organizations that Dr. King valued. And he did it, come on, hands back here, quietly behind the scenes, quietly behind the scenes. My grandfather took his grain of sand and he acted in the best way that he knew how. My grandfather heard Dr. King's instruction about the meaning and purpose of our lives when he says, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. When we become silent about the things that matter, that's what ends our life. I want you to know that I believe that social justice is a value. What did I just say? Social justice is a what? It's a value. We all have the freedom to practice what we value. King said of freedom, and this is the second time I probably be repeated in his 50 language, please forgive him, that the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in a moment of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at a time of challenge and controversy. We're comfortable now. We're comfortable sitting here. That means we're going to be tested. Now let me tell you the second part, the second story. It is my story. It is a story in a time of challenge and controversy. On April 4th, the day Martin Luther King was assassinated, I was walking home from school to the public housing projects that I lived in because I grew up poor. I grew up with a single mother with a 10th grade education. I grew up taking care of my brothers. I felt a deep emotional pain. I was in shock. I was in despair. I was crying. I was picking up rocks and I was throwing them. I was 14 years old, and I was wondering, what was the meaning of Martin Luther King's dream now? I was one of 12 black students in a public high school in which there were 3,000 students in Detroit, Michigan. The next day, I went home, took out the scissors, cut off my hair. I got myself an afro. I put a black armband around my arm, and I went to school, and I was silent, nonviolent. And I was kicked out of school. What do you say? Oh, no, better than that. We moved to another part of the city. I went to a black high school. Memories of the Detroit 1967 riot flooded my mind, where 3,000 people were imprisoned on a public island, and the governor called in 8,000 National Guards to contain them, and we felt like animals in a cage. And I thought, how has King's dream freed me? I joined the Black Panther Party when I was 15 years old. I was ready to help start the revolution, defend my race, and kill the racist, capitalist, imperialist pigs that colonized the world, exploited everyone, and excluded people of color from higher education, decent jobs, and professional lives. I was hurt. I was angry. I was justified. The wrongs on the throne were legal and about to sway again, hands out, because my generation was coming. There was no turning back. The Black Power movement, the women's movement, the anti-war movement, the poor